What's going on, YouTube? So tonight's video is going to be a little bit controversial. So I'm giving you a trigger warning in advance because tonight we're going to go against everything that you know about the mainstream teachings of early Christianity and early Judaism, or anything within the old Hebrew Bible. So I highly suggest you all put your cognitive dissonance to the side and let's learn about the lost teachings of the Gnostics. We know of the lost Gnostic teachings thanks to the recovery of the Nag Hammadi library, which was rediscovered in 1945 near the temple of Hathor at Dendera, Egypt. The exact circumstances surrounding the burial of the Nag Hammadi library are not known, with various theories and speculations about who may have buried the text and why. One theory suggests that the texts were buried by Gnostic monks or a community of Gnostic believers in the 4th century in order to protect them from destruction by Orthodox Christian authorities, who consider Gnosticism to be heretical. According to this theory, the texts were hidden in a jar buried in the desert near Nag Hammadi, where they remained undisturbed for over thousands of years until their discovery. Now, prior teachings of the Gnostics were based off of the statements of the people who persecuted them, which we know could be very inaccurate. Gnostic teachings were a diverse set of spiritual beliefs and practices that emerged in the early centuries of Christianity. These teachings emphasized the importance of inner knowledge, or gnosis, as a means of obtaining salvation and a deeper understanding of the divine. However, over time, these teachings were largely wiped out of mainstream Christianity, and there were several reasons for this. One of the main factors was the growing power and influence of the institutional church, which sought to establish a standardized set of beliefs and practices. The Gnostic teachings were seen as a threat to the authority because they emphasized individual spiritual experience over the authority of the church hierarchy. Additionally, the Gnostic teachings were often associated with heretical or unorthodox beliefs. Some Gnostic sects believed that the material world was evil or that there were multiple gods, which went against the Orthodox Christian doctrine. The early Christian church sought out to distance itself from other religions and philosophies of the time, including Gnosticism, in order to establish a unique identity and claim exclusive access to the divine truth. As a result, the Gnostic teachings were labeled as heretical and were condemned by the church authorities. Many Gnostic texts were banned, and those who practiced Gnosticism were persecuted and often executed. Now, despite efforts to erase Gnosticism from history, some texts and teachings still survive. These teachings were preserved by secret societies, esoteric traditions, and have recently resurfaced in the study of religious history and spirituality. Today, there is a renewed interest in Gnosticism and its teachings, as many people seek to explore alternative spiritual paths and discover the deeper truths that live within. Now, who is God according to the Gnostics? The Gnostic concept of God is complex and multi-layered. Gnostics believe in a transient, unknowable, supreme being or divine force, often referred to as the monad or the absolute, the father of eternity, or the invisible spirit. According to Gnostic beliefs, this divine force is too vast and incomprehensible for humans to directly experience or understand. Instead, the divine force manifests in various emanations known as eons, which are understood as divine beings or archetypes that represent different aspects of divine. According to the book of John, the one is the invisible spirit. We should not think of it as a god or like a god, for it is greater than God because it has nothing over it and no Lord above it. It does not exist within anything inferior to it, since everything exists within it, for it is established itself. It is eternal, since it does not need anything in order to be completed by it. Rather, it is always absolutely, completely in light. The one is limitable, since there is nothing before it to limit it. Unfathomable, since there is nothing before it to fathom it. Immeasurable, since there is nothing before it to measure it. Invisible, since nothing has seen it. Eternal, since it exists eternally. Unutterable, since nothing could comprehend it to utter it. Unnameable, since there is nothing before it to give it a name. God is devolved into the complex world of eons. These eons are God's thoughts about himself, both being identical to him, but simultaneously also different. These eons are a form of divine beings or divine lights and are named after certain divine attributes. Barbello is often considered the first and most important eon, as she represents the initial emanation from the ultimate Godhead, or according to the secret book of John, Barbello is described as a feminine figure who is the first thought or idea to the unknowable Godhead. In the Gnostic creation story, Barbello is said to have emerged from the depths of the Godhead's infinite potential as a manifestation of its creative power. She is often associated with the divine feminine and is seen as a source of nurturing and motherly love. As the first eon, Barbello is said to be responsible for giving birth to the subsequent eons. These eons together make up the spiritual realm and play a central role in the Gnostic understanding of the universe. In some Gnostic texts, Barbello is associated with Sophia, the wisdom figure who fell from the divine realm and became trapped in the material world. In these traditions, Barbello is seen as a counterpart to Sophia, representing the divine feminine as a source of redemption and spiritual transformation. The Barbello or forethought serves as the most central of the eons from which others originate. Barbello is central to the idea of Christ. The Barbello with the invisible spirit formed Christ, creating a family triad, Father being the invisible spirit, Mother the Barbello, and Son being Christ. Christ is the ruler of the rest of the eons. There are 4 luminaries around Christ's eon known as Harmozel, Oriel, Deliothai, and Elele, which contain the archetypal human beings Adam and his son Seth. Eons usually have a divine feminine and divine masculine which complement each other. The outermost eon, Wisdom / Sophia, wanted to create a thought of her own without the consent of her male counterpart or the invisible spirit. Now, according to the secret book of John, she, Wisdom, wanted to bring forth something like herself without the consent of spirit who had not given approval, without her partner and without his consideration. The male did not give approval. She did not find her partner, and she considered this without spirit's consent and without the knowledge of her partner. Nonetheless, she gave birth. This resulted in a pseudo-divine being that stood outside of the divine world. It had the figure of a snake and the face of a lion. Sophia tried to hide it away from the rest of the eons in kind of a cloud. This being is given the name Yada-Ba'oth or Saklas. Yada-Ba'oth thinks that he is the only divinity having little knowledge of the true divine world. He creates an imperfect and flawed world based on a little memory he has of the divine pleroma. The world created by Yada-Ba'oth is the material world which we live in. This belief is what separates Gnostic beliefs from mainstream Christianity. They believe that the material world was created by a divine being lower than the highest God, and that the God of the Hebrew Bible / Old Testament is not the real God, but an evil entity. It was Yada-Ba'oth who created Adam and Eve and infused the divine spark that gave humans the ability to get out of this lesser material world, but only if they know how to go in oneself and find it. These teachings also differ because it is Yada-Ba'oth who rapes Eve when her spirit leaves her body, which results in the imperfect birth of Cain and Abel. They have another son called Seth, who was conceived in a pure way. Seth is the bearer of Gnosis and the true son of Adam and Eve. Seth is who Gnostics trace their lineage to. They are referred to as the seed of Seth or Sethians. The Adam and Eve story also differs because it's believed that the serpent that tricks Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge is not Satan, but a messenger from the divine world who is trying to help Adam and Eve escape from the creation of Yada-Ba'oth. To Gnostics, knowledge is essential for the progress of the soul. When you look at the Gnostic tree of life, you'll notice it's a psychedelic mushroom. The Gnostic teaching of mushrooms referred to the belief that mushrooms, particularly psychedelic ones, contain a divine or mystical essence that can lead to spiritual awakening and enlightenment. This concept has roots in ancient Gnostic traditions, which viewed the material world as a prison that trapped the soul and sought to transcend it through spiritual knowledge. According to this belief system, the consumption of certain mushrooms can allow individuals to temporarily break free from the constraints of the physical world and enter into a state of heightened consciousness or gnosis. Gnosis refers to a type of knowledge that is not acquired through conventional means, but rather through direct experience and intuition. The use of mushrooms as a tool for spiritual exploration and awakening is not unique just to Gnostic traditions. Many indigenous cultures throughout history have used psychedelics in their spiritual practices, including the use of psilocybin mushrooms by indigenous tribes in Mesoamerica. The Gnostic teachings of mushrooms emphasize the importance of intention and mindfulness in their use. It is believed that the experience of ingesting mushrooms should be approached with reverence and respect, and that certain levels of spiritual preparation is necessary to fully benefit from their effects. Critics of this belief system argue that the use of psychedelics for spiritual purposes can be dangerous and unpredictable, and that there are other, safer methods of achieving spiritual enlightenment. However, proponents of Gnostic teachings of mushrooms maintain that when used responsibly and with proper guidance, mushrooms can be a powerful tool for self-discovery and transformation. Now, I did an entire video on whether or not Jesus Christ was a magic mushroom. That's a rabbit hole I think you all should check out. I'll leave it in the description below. Now, looking at all this, it does appear as if the God of the old tea does feel like a malevolent being, or a gatekeeper, or very Dr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll compared to the new tea in the Old Testament. You kick out Adam and Eve for trying to acquire knowledge, and you make people only worship you. I can see why the Gnostics kind of think that he's not the real God. The God of the Old Testament is very jealous and harsh. I mean, he tells Abraham to murder his son, destroys humanity with a flood, which to the Gnostics, the deluge was not inflicted to punish evil as the Old Testament informs us, but instead a way of a jealous God to punish humanity for having risen so high and to take delight, the gnosis that was growing amongst men. The survivors were thrown into the great distraction into a life of toil, so that mankind would be occupied with worldly affairs and not have the opportunity of being devoted to the Holy Spirit. Now, if you're familiar with the concept of reincarnation in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you are not supposed to hold on to this materialistic world, because that is how you fall back into the Archon soul trap, or you repeat samsara. The Gnostic notion that there's a divine spark within all of us. Yaldabaoth and the Archons are trying to keep us away from the spark, which is the key to escaping the illusion. Yaldabaoth only wants his creations to worship him and punish those who don't. Now, in the secret book of John, he mentions, "For my part, I am a jealous God, and there is no other God apart from me." Now, my question to this is, if there is no other God, who would he have to be jealous of? To the Gnostics, the God in the Old Testament is Yaldabaoth. The God in the New Testament, who represents love and compassion, is the true God who sends Jesus. Jesus was sent to help human beings escape the delusional prison of Yaldabaoth's material world, and also teach gnosis and remind humanity of their true identity and real home in the divine realm. Jesus' teachings were not meant for everyone, but only a select few who were capable of understanding the spiritual truths he was revealing. Some Gnostic texts, Jesus is portrayed as a revealer of secret knowledge, who teaches his disciples about the true nature of the universe and the human soul. Other Gnostic texts portray Jesus more as a mysterious figure who appears and disappears at will and speaks riddles and parables. Overall, the Gnostic view of Jesus was quite different from the mainstream Christian view. Mainstream Christians saw Jesus as a human being who also was the Son of God. The Gnostics saw him as a divine being who had taken a human form in order to teach spiritual truths to those who were ready to receive them. Now, this is what some may call Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness is a term that is used in some spiritual and religious traditions to refer to a state of awareness or enlightenment that is characterized by a deep sense of unity and connection with the divine. It is often associated with the teachings and examples of Jesus Christ, although it is not limited to any particular religious tradition. When one is fully awakened to the divine nature of reality and is able to live in harmony with that reality, with a sense of unconditional love, compassion, and empathy for all beings, and a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things, he has achieved Christ consciousness. This can be attained through spiritual practices such as transcendental meditation, prayer, and self-reflection. In these traditions, the goal is to cultivate a deep inner awareness of one's true nature as a spiritual being and live in accordance with that true nature. In conclusion, Gnostic beliefs are a complex and diverse set of religious and philosophical ideas that have been present throughout history. At their core, Gnostic beliefs center around the idea of gnosis, or knowledge, as a means of spiritual awakening and liberation. Gnostic beliefs have had significant influence on various religious and philosophical traditions throughout history, including Christianity, Neoplatonism, and Hermeticism. However, their ideas have also been heavily criticized and opposed by some religious and philosophical groups, particularly within Orthodox Christianity. Today, Gnostic beliefs continue to be studied and explored by scholars and practitioners of various spiritual traditions. While their ideas and practices may not be universally accepted or embraced, they offer a unique perspective on the nature of spirituality and the human condition. Now, I want to end this video with just a bit of gratitude, because I just want to say I am grateful for all my followers, and I'm grateful for all of you who come here to learn, especially with this type of knowledge. This isn't something that your typical mainstream scholars would accept. And I'm just a big fan of learning about different religions and sharing them with you all. Now, I am by no means any expert on Gnosticism, and you know how many times I had the urge to say Gnostic, like that silent G. Like I might have slipped up and said it, but I'm just saying, like, I'm no expert. So if you have any of your own input to the Gnostic text, please feel free to leave them in the comment. Also, support this page with a simple like and comment and share. Other than that, until next time, YouTube.
Tap into the frequency line.